These are 5-minute drawings. I'm going to be using the same material as before in the 1s and 2s, which is the Conte in these reddish earth tones. So let's go. All right, so this is a demonstration for 5-minute drawings. The priority is going to be action first, then a little bit of a proportional check, then volume, and then lastly detail. Remember, as we start to get to a little bit longer drawings, that there aren't any concave lines on the body. All the muscles are convex forms. So I'm going to start like I do. I'm going to start a little bit light. I don't want to bring a ring to a first date, so I think it's good to stay a little bit restrained so you have 2 chances to fix your drawing. Build some forgiveness into your process. So head, I'm drawing a little bit darker than I would if I were just drawing for myself, because I want you to be able to see it. So head, filling up the same way as the quick ones really. Head, neck, spine, ties the main masses together. Pelvis and rib cage, looking for axes. Axis of the shoulders, axis of the pelvis. Her weight-bearing legs in the back. Axis of the knees. And then the axis of the feet. Then I'll come back up and give her arms. You can take your drawing priority almost like a biological priority, right? You don't want to start with one little piece of it. I'm going to try and move through the whole drawing continuously so I don't get trapped in a detail. All right, so I want to get I've got the action down now. Now I'm starting to get some of the volumes. I like to address the volume with the plane break, basically where the model goes from day to night. So I'm going to tend to use the side of the Conte and lay in the places where she's in shadow, generally. And I tend to do that before I carve in the contour lines too darkly, but carving in the contour lines more decisively can also be a good way of addressing volume. Now I have a little bit of something down for everything. I could be a little bit more decisive. Start carving in some darks. Remember, you don't want to keep your line weight the same everywhere, just like you wouldn't want to keep your value the same everywhere. So I tend to want to have my line weight agree with the light direction. It's a good way to make decisions about it. In other words, where she's darker, like over on the shadow side, it makes much more sense to dig in a darker line than it does in the lit side. If your line weight's even throughout your drawing, you can make it look more flat. And as I start to carve out the contour lines, because I've built it up logically, you really build your drawings. You don't want to just sort of try and copy what you see. Because I've built them up from the main masses, now my contour lines are what they should be. The contour lines are a byproduct of the way I'm understanding the masses, instead of the line down one side of the model, line down the other side of the model. The model's holding very still, but she still has to breathe, so those contour lines are a little bit fluid. If you build things up in a way that helps you understand what everything is doing, what the masses are doing, it's much easier for you to stay on track and not get distracted by details. All right, let's do another 5. So I'm starting another one, starting light. What I meant in the first drawing about bringing a ring to a first date is if you start with lines that are dark, right, like the lines I wrote with over to the right, you're very committed to the drawing at an early stage. So just to explain what I meant by the bringing the ring to a first date. So I'm working my way through the drawing, just like the last one, getting the gesture first, because that really has primacy. So the gesture, or the action, is the foundation, right? And then we check our proportion off of that. In a 5-minute drawing, I don't really have time to check proportion by measuring much. So I'm sort of relying on what I know from having done a lot of drawings, which is why it's good to do a lot of these short drawings. Again, you get used to almost a letter form thing, where if the head is an egg, that's 1 unit high. The rib cage is about 1.5. Pelvis is again about 1 head high, and near the middle of the pelvis or the bottom of the pelvis would be about the middle of the pose, depending on what the model is doing. So now that I have a first pass through the whole drawing very lightly, I'm going back through and starting to be a little more precise, get the plane break on her. Again, plane break is where she goes from day to night, so you can see where I'm making the shadow with the Conte is really just where the model's in shadow. Now I'll start to dig in some of those lines a little bit darker as I go through, and correct as I go through a little bit. I'm not strictly following the lines I made the first time. You can see there's another head. I was a little bit wrong about the head position. I was a little bit wrong about the pelvis position. And that's why you want to start these very lightly. Now I'm starting to be a little bit more precise, make some firmer choices. I was still correcting yet again on that back leg. And really you want to stay fallible, which is part of the reason you want to start light with your drawings. It's a very important part of drawing, that you build your drawings up. If you just start copying what you see and go detail by detail, it's going to be very difficult for you to have your drawing cohere into one thing. And that's really what we want, is to have the viewer, when they look at your drawing, almost feel the gesture of the model. Not almost. We want them to feel the gesture of the model. So that's really the goal. I'm just working my way back up through, trying to give her a little bit of features of the head if I have time, laying them in really simply, really just the brow line and where the eyes are, bottom of the nose, and top lip is the little marks I have on the head there. As I work my way through, getting some of the contour lines a little darker. Again, the contour lines are agreeing with the light direction. You don't want your lines to be the same all over your drawing, right? Where I didn't draw on the paper, it's white. It's all the same value, so it's flat. If I make my lines the same weight, it's going to correspondingly flatten out my drawing. So just like with the shading, right? If I start to shade in everything, if I shade it all the same value, I've made sort of nothing, right? So anyway, try to be sensitive to your values and your line quality and line weight. The goal is, you know, as I go back through the drawing, I'm trying to make these lines longer and more fluid, and really have each line show what one part of the body's doing. So I keep rechecking and measuring is what some of those little wobbles are. So I think that was that's about the middle right there. See, about that top of the trochanter, which is at the top of your femur, the great trochanter. Trying to fuss with the head. See, this is why, if you're using Conte, this is why it's good to file that one end down to a cone, because it gives you a more precise point you can control. If you just break a piece of Conte or a piece of charcoal, you're going to have jagged edges. And if you try and draw a face, you could catch the wrong edge and it could go up or down more than you want it to, and you'll be frustrated. And I'm also able to make this smooth value with the side of the Conte because I dulled it down a little bit. When Conte's new, it's a little bit like a little brick, so the edges could be hard, and it might not make an even smooth value like that.
So just rub your Conte down.